All right, here we go. Welcome into the show. You're watching Philadelphia Eagles Now. Chase Sr. here with you. And as always, no matter where you are, how you're tuned in, thank you so much for making today's show a part of your day. Breaking news coming in just moments ago. And so there's so much to talk about over the next several minutes. The Eagles did get a big break before playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. There's also some good news going into this Eagles-Buccaneers matchup. But on top of that, some bad news. And Philadelphia just made a flurry of roster moves on this Wednesday, September 24th, going into the Sunday Week 4 matchup against Tampa Bay, a team that has been a thorn in the sides of the Eagles. Here are those roster moves for Philadelphia. Busy day for Howie Roseman. The Eagles have signed safety Marcus Epps, tight end Cam Latu, and cornerback Parry Nickerson to the active roster. Some of the corresponding roster moves here for the Birds. They have placed cornerback Jakorian Bennett, wide receiver Darius Cooper, and edge rusher Nolan Smith on injured reserve. They have to miss at least the next 4 games because they've been placed on IR. And then furthermore, Lance Dixon, Eli Ricks, and former Eagles legend Quez Watkins have been added to the practice squad. Dixon, a linebacker who performed pretty well throughout the preseason. Eli Ricks, of course, a UDFA from 2023. And then Quez Watkins, a speedster, was a mini camp, training camp preseason stud. It never really translated to the regular season. He has blazing speed, but he doesn't really have good tracking ability, and he's a little bit small. Obviously, with these moves here, there is one player who really stands out among the rest. It's Nolan Smith. He is definitely the most notable loss. Eagles were really relying on him this year 1 to year 2, after he was selected in the first round after the Eagles had taken Jalen Carter in the 2023 draft. He went from 1 sack in year 1 to 6.5 sacks in year 2. And then during that playoff and Super Bowl run last year, he was a bona fide star. He led all players across the NFL in the playoffs with 4 sacks. And of course, this offseason, the Eagles remade their defensive line to a certain degree, right? Milton Williams got that bag from the New England Patriots. Josh Sweat signed with the Arizona Cardinals, and he is balling under Jonathan Gannon. And so the Eagles went into this year knowing that Nolan Smith and Jalen Hunt are 2 young players who they really like, but they were relying on them a lot to make up for some of the veterans who Philadelphia lost, in addition to a player like Brandon Graham. And so to lose Nolan Smith, who is a really talented pass rusher, but also one of the best edge-setting defenders in the NFL, a really good and violent run defender, this is a loss for this Eagles defense. I also have some concerns here because Nolan Smith, dating all the way back to his days at Georgia when he was playing for the Bulldogs, he's been injured a lot. As for that injury, he tweaked the torn triceps that he had surgery on. But the good news is here from Mike Garafolo, NFL Network, is that for Nolan Smith, Jakorian Bennett, and Darius Cooper, all of these injuries, non-surgical injuries. And the hope is that the Eagles are going to get all of them back around that Week 9 bye. According to some people who I'm talking to, Nolan Smith might not be back until after the bye. So we might have to miss more than the 4 games designated with him going on IR. Elsewhere on the Eagles injury report, these just coming in from the practice field for Philadelphia. Zach Bond is practicing, but has a huge brace on his knee. And then Jahad Campbell is not going through drills. Lane Johnson is back at practice, but he's not really doing much after suffering that neck stinger on Sunday in that thrilling win against the Rams. Before we continue to push forward, this is why you subscribe to the show. When breaking news happens, I always have you covered. And also, thank you to all of the real ones who continue to support this channel. We just surpassed 130,000 subscribers. If you haven't subscribed, join the movement today for daily and year-round coverage of the Birds. Elsewhere on the injury front, just pertaining to this Eagles-Buccaneers game, both teams 3-0, both teams 2 of the top teams in the NFC thus far, and it's one of the better matchups across the league here in Week 4. Wide receiver Mike Evans, not going to play against Philadelphia. He has a hamstring injury, suffered that late in the game against the New York Jets as the Bucs barely held on. They had a field goal blocked by New York. Looked as though they were going to lose to a bad team, and then Baker Mayfield really rallied the troops late. And Mike Evans does have a history of hamstring problems. He's expected to miss multiple weeks, but it's not expected to be as bad as last year's hamstring ailment, which did sideline him for 3 games. Now, why this matters for this game? Mike Evans, by far, is Baker Mayfield's number 1 wideout. Chris Godwin is still coming off of that broken ankle that he suffered last year. Evans is also one of the best wide receivers in the history of football. He sneakily is putting together one of the finest careers for any player ever at that position. He's also very difficult to defend at 6'5", oftentimes able to come down with those 50-50 balls, and is just a big target for Baker and can run a variety of routes, but in particular in the red zone and down the sideline because he uses that big frame to box out DBs. And what's a problem here is that the Eagles are going to be shorthanded at cornerback. And so this almost neutralizes, right? The Bucs without Mike Evans. The Eagles could be without Adoree Jackson and definitely Jakorian Bennett after he got placed on injured reserve. And so it could be Keely Ringo time at cornerback 2 for the Birds. And what a career Mike Evans has had going back to him. 7th overall pick in the 2014 NFL draft out of Texas A&M, and he's as good as ever. He's been a 6-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All-Pro, and this is what's crazy to me. The longevity and the consistency. 2025 for him is year 12. In each of the prior 11 seasons for Mike Evans, he has gone over 1,000 yards in his first 11 years in the league. This production and the longevity is wild here. As a rookie, 68 catches, more than 1,000 yards, 12 touchdowns as a rookie. And then every year since then, over the 1,000-yard mark. And he's been pretty durable. I mean, he's rarely missed more than a few games. The fewest games that he's played in a season, 2019, when he played 13. But you look at the yards per catch numbers, you look at the touchdown numbers, double-digit receiving touchdown seasons, several seasons of his career, and it's not like he's just going over 1,000 yards. I mean, some of these years, 1,100, 1,200 yards. What a player at that wide receiver spot for the Buccaneers. And we had an indication that the Eagles could be banged up at the corner spot. Jason Dumas, who is actually from the Philly area, worked in the Bay Area for a while, but is now with 6ABC in Philly, was told a couple of days ago that both Adoree Jackson and Jakorian Bennett dealing with injuries that could keep them out against the Bucs. We're not sure about Adoree yet, dealing with a groin injury, I believe. Jakorian Bennett, we're still not sure what his injury is, and I'm not sure when he got hurt. He had a great play that we'll talk about here in just a moment. As for Adoree, he's been scrutinized and under heavy criticism the first 3 games of the year. The Eagles have the luxury of having Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean as their top 2 corners. But obviously, DeJean plays a lot in the slot because that allows Vic Fangio to use him all over the field. Quinyon's played some really good ball on the outside, but Adoree as the other outside corner has really struggled. And that's according to our eyes. That's according to film study. And, of course, the Pro Football Focus numbers. Has an overall PFF grade of 42.7. That ranks 145th among 158 qualifying corners going into week 4. His coverage grade, 41.3. That's 137. Passer rating allowed when targeted of 93.3. He's missed 3 tackles, and at times they've been bad missed tackles in space. To his credit, does have a couple of pass breakups. That ranks 14th. He's given up 11 catches. That ranks 16th. When he went out at the end of that Rams game, Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay took note because they targeted Jakorian Bennett right away. And I'm not going to put up Bennett's Pro Football Focus numbers because so far this year, he's only played 21 coverage snaps. I know a lot of Rams fans were complaining about this borderline hold and PI that did not get called. Wasn't a catchable ball from Matthew Stafford. And these are plays at the end of games and really throughout the course of games that you will see all the time. And it was made worse because Bennett mostly slipped. Now, did he grip up Puka Nacua coming out of his break? Yes, he did. But I thought it was a call that could have gone either way, and obviously the Eagles weren't penalized. And we talk about how thrilling of a win that was for the Eagles against the Rams, and how crazy it was that Jordan Davis, at more than 330 pounds, scooped and scored the kick that he blocked to run it back for a touchdown. That allowed the Eagles to cover as well. Pandemonium and craziness at Lincoln Financial Field. The Eagles sideline went crazy. It goes down as one of the craziest wins in the history of this organization, especially in recent memory. But the scoop and score probably does not happen if it weren't for Jakorian Bennett. This is making a sacrifice here and playing team football. And maybe Bennett got injured on this play, but you'll see here how the holder on the kick for Joshua Carty tried to scoop up this football. Jakorian Bennett leveled him. So then the holder wasn't able to recover that fumble, and then you see number 90 right here in the shadows, able to pick up the pill, take it back for a touchdown. It is the fastest speed on record that a 330-plus pounder has run at nearly 19 miles per hour. Jordan Davis, an athletic freak, a guy who at the NFL Combine coming out of Georgia ran a sub 4.9 40-yard dash. Freaky. Now, without Jakorian Bennett, with Adoree Jackson potentially hurt, here are the other options for the Eagles at corner 2. Keely Ringo. Vic Fangio said it's probably going to be his time. We'll get to that here in a moment. Mac McWilliams, the rookie 4th-round pick out of UCF, started camp in the slot, but then shifted to the outside. Vic Fangio likes him. The Eagles added Eli Ricks to the practice squad. And then another name to monitor here, and it's a name that I mentioned among all of the roster moves that the Eagles made at the start of this show, Parry Nickerson, a veteran who's been on 7 or 8 teams and 7 or 8 seasons at the NFL level. He can play inside or outside, and throughout training camp and in the preseason, he was one of the top Eagles corners. He was elevated from the practice squad. Here's what Fangio said about Keely. I've told Keely here recently, not in the last few days, but since the end of camp, he's going to get his opportunity at some point, and he's got to be ready. And I know Keely struggled in the preseason opener against the Bengals. Yes, he was going up against Jamar Chase, but look, he's going to be going up against a lot of upper echelon wide receivers if he carves out some playing time. And he looked bad. There's no other way to go about it. He does have some intriguing skill sets, right? I don't like the lack of lateral speed, but he does run in the 4.3s at over 200 pounds. And in 2024, he fared okay in limited action. He didn't really play poorly a year ago when he did get those opportunities. He played 179 defensive snaps and had a Pro Football Focus grade of 65.5, which was in the green. That did rank 60th out of 157 corners who played at least 100 defensive snaps. His 66.4 coverage grade ranked 55th out of 157. And so with the Eagles bringing back Eli Ricks, adding him to the practice squad, maybe he'll be a game day elevation because the Eagles are short-handed at that corner spot. Probably going to come down to whether or not Adoree Jackson can play. If he can't, I would imagine Ricks is active for Sunday. In 2023, in the preseason, had that pick 6 against Baltimore in the preseason. I like his length at the position. I don't have his 2024 numbers listed because he barely played. I did think he did some solid things given the situation in 2023. Eagles defense was a disaster. One of the worst in the league. Sean Desai was the DC, then Matt Patricia. Neither DC had that defense playing better. Ricks that year was able to log 233 coverage snaps, allowed a passer rating of 76.1, allowed 11.6 yards per catch. He had 2 PBUs, 16 catches allowed. He did miss 4 tackles. That can be a problem with him because he's a thinner, wiry player and had a Pro Football Focus coverage grade of 44.9. But I did think at moments he played better than what that grade indicated. All right, still to come here on Eagles Now. Some good news for the Birds going into Eagles-Bucks after we did get to some bad news. And you know I always like to say, context is important. Well, the Eagles have struggled mightily against the Buccaneers in recent memory. Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts are 1-4 against the Bucks in 5 matchups. But there's been a constant that has hurt the Eagles. We'll get to that just around the corner. And that constant not going to be the case on Sunday, which means Philadelphia has an opportunity to finally end their spell against Tampa Bay and win this game. Let's get to our sponsor, though, our friends at Prize Picks. We really appreciate them for making today's Philadelphia Eagles now possible. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. #1 daily fantasy sports app. You can win big up to 2,000 times your money. And right now, when you download the app using our link, prizepicks.com/CLNS, and when you use the code CLNS, you get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. It's very simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in. This is the best way to win cash this football season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your takes into cash all season long on Prize Picks. The best place to win cash while watching sports, so join the millions of users and sign up today. The selections that we like for our 3-pick power play: A.J. Brown, got to find the end zone. More than a half rushing or receiving touchdown. Bucky Irving, he's a dog. More than 61.5 rushing yards. Eagles are going to have to tackle well. And then Jalen Hurts, this is the special this week, more than a half passing yard. That's all he has to do is throw for 1 passing yard, and that's an automatic win. New users, play $5, get $50 instantly in lineups. Real money sports action made easy. prizepicks.com/CLNS. That link is in the comment section right now. Okay, so as we know, talked about this all week. Been talking about it since the aftermath of that Eagles-Rams game, because we've all had this game circled. Eagles-Bucks. And Philadelphia, their struggles against Tampa Bay, well documented. What's interesting is that the Eagles, as of right now, are still road favorites. Philadelphia giving 3.5 points. So they are 3.5-point favorites. The over-under for this game at 43.5. Kickoff is set for 1 p.m. Eastern at Raymond James Stadium. And the last 5 matchups for the Eagles against the Bucks hasn't been good for the Birds. Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts, 1-4 against the Bucks in their careers together. And a lot of these losses have been ugly. September of last year, 33-16 loss to Tampa. In the wild card round at the end of the 2023 season, 32-9 loss to the Buccaneers. Earlier that year, the Eagles did beat the Bucks 25-11. But then 2 more losses to document here, 31-15 on the 16th of January in 2022. That was the 2021 season. So Nick Sirianni's first year. Eagles made the playoffs, year 1 of a rebuild. They lost to Tom Brady in that game. And then in the regular season that season, the Eagles also lost to Tom Brady and the Bucks 28-22. The Eagles are also 1-6 in their last 7 games against Tampa Bay, dating all the way back to 2015. And obviously, they played each other a lot over the last few years. And one of the problems with going to Tampa, the Eagles have lost 3 of 4 in Florida. It's the heat. And the heat, obviously this changes all the time. I mean, it's changed since we did our preview on Tuesday. The temperature is going to be in the low to mid 90s. And it was expected to feel like the low to mid 90s. Unfortunately, not any longer. It is supposed to be 103 degrees in real field temperature Sunday in Tampa. And you know how Vic Fangio approaches this and what he thinks about the heat. He thinks it's just a mindset. And he said that training camp heat would help prepare the Eagles for this game, but he said, quote, "It is too late to do anything right now, for it is as far as prepping for it. You don't practice in heat one day and say you're acclimated, or take a pill and say you're acclimated. The key will be, it's a mindset, number 1. Number 2, we need to not let them have 8, 10, 12 play drives on us." And another thing that's important here, the Buccaneers are going to do what the Eagles did this past weekend. Warmer game in September. The Buccaneers will be wearing white jerseys. The Eagles will be in their green jerseys, which can make it feel even hotter. And when you're playing at 1 p.m. Eastern, that sun is going to be hovering over the stadium for every single second of that game. But here's the good component of this and the good news, so to speak. As I always like to say, context is always important. While Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni are 1-4 against the Buccaneers, A.J. Brown did not play in any of those 4 losses. When A.J. did play, that was when the Eagles beat the Bucs early in the 2023 season prior to the collapse, which then led to the ugly wild card round loss. A.J. in that game, a victory for the Birds, had 9 catches for 131 yards, and Philadelphia won 25-11. Now, in Week 4 last year, the Eagles did lose 33-16. It was an ugly loss. At one point, the Buccaneers had over 200 yards of offense early in the game. The Eagles had none. Defensively, they were really bad. Offensively, outside of some pop plays for Saquon Barkley, they didn't really show up. And it was unfortunate considering what the Eagles did the week before, coming through with that really exciting win over the New Orleans Saints on the road. And then the Eagles lose this game. They went into the bye. And at that point, some people wanted Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman fired. I wasn't one of them. But again, context's important, right? In that 33-16 loss to the Bucs, the Eagles were without Lane Johnson. We saw how the Eagles fared without him against the Rams in that first half. They were awful. 3 drives, -9 yards once Lane went out in that first half. The Eagles were also without A.J. Brown in that game. He was dealing with the hamstring injury, and Devontae Smith's been very durable throughout his career. He did not play in that Week 4 game either, which dropped the Eagles to 2-2. And so the Eagles' top wide receivers in that game, Jahan Dotson, who the Eagles had just acquired, was the number 1 wideout. Paris Campbell was the number 2. John Ross was the Eagles' number 3 wideout, and Johnny Wilson was the 4th wideout, didn't even have a catch. So the Eagles locked and loaded on offense, pretty healthy on offense going into this game. Defensively, pretty banged up. Offensively, though, they're ready to get revenge and seek revenge against the Bucs, and their offensive unit going to be a lot healthier than they were this time last year. There's also been a concern voiced by a lot of Buccaneers fans who watched my Eagles-Buccaneers preview. Shout out to all of you. I always like doing previews, and then the opposing fan base compliments what we do on the show, and they say, obviously you're an Eagles fan, but this is the most thorough breakdown I've seen on this game on YouTube. Appreciate that. But Buccaneers fans have said, we haven't played well for a full 4 quarters yet, which is why the Buccaneers have won all of their games by just a couple of points, 1-score games, and Baker Mayfield has had to drive the team down the field late and pull off some heroics for the Bucs to be 3-0. Well, you think about this matchup, right? And you think about what the Eagles do well. Philadelphia plays pretty damn good football for all 60 minutes, and they wear teams down over the course of 60 minutes. And so a couple of keys that just come to mind immediately here. Vic Fangio said one of them. It's going to be important for the Eagles defense, which is injured, to not give up these long drives, which over the course of a game can wear the Eagles defense down. It's also important for the Eagles offense to do what the Eagles defense doesn't want to happen, right? Go on long drives and wear that Buccaneers defense down. But if Philadelphia is able to get that early lead, I've said this so many times, they're like a boa constrictor. And over the course of 4 quarters, they just suffocate you slowly but surely. So who you got in this game? PHI for the Eagles, TB for the Buccaneers. Share your thoughts with me, get those predictions in, and of course, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.